Hi. I watched Final Destination Bloodlines and I thought I'd share my thoughts with the world. So, if you want to know what the overall score is, although I'm not going to be giving a score, I'm going to just rank each of the movies and you can use that as my assessment of the movie. You can skip to later on, but stick around because I'm going to complain and yap a little bit, right? So, problem number one that Final Destination movies struggle with on a broad scope, and I think this is also horror movies, so you can just replace, anytime I say Final Destination, replace that with horror movie and you're probably going to get the similar kind of take from me. The characters in these stories tend to be very one note, tend to be more so vehicles to deliver the weird and crazy over the top deaths that we know and love in the Final Destination franchise. But because the Final Destination franchise oftentimes approaches its kills in very unsatisfying ways, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but it approaches a lot of its kills in unsatisfying ways and then pairs that together with characters who aren't really fun to watch, fun to engage with in any capacity, or even makes you just go, oh man, I didn't want that person to get it, or if they were just a second earlier, because we know this character is going to die, but at least give me the illusion that there was a possibility that one or two of them wouldn't just end up like a smear on the ground, right? When we pair all of those things together, it really doesn't feel like it's a fun experience. And Final Destination Bloodlines, I feel like, suffers from this quite a bit. This is going to be an attempt at a spoiler-free discussion, so I'm going to go into this and it's going to sound really jank because of the way that I'm going to be trying to describe certain events, right? But an example I can give is that there is a character in the story that basically all the other characters have a relationship with. Every single one of them, right? They have a relationship with this character. And this character dies in front of all of them. They all see this person die. But we don't ever get a reaction to, after the fact, right? Because we do get the shock. When they see the person die, they go, oh, whoa, right? But after that, we don't get much in terms of anybody's perspectives on this character's death. We don't get to have the characters again their reaction to it, where they're just no, that it couldn't have happened this way. Wasn't the way that this person died really weird? We don't get questions. We don't get arguments. We don't get discussions. It's more so the discussion that takes place afterwards is our protagonist, Stephanie, trying to convince the rest of the cast this is death. Death did this. For those of you who don't know how the Final Destination franchise works, typically what happens is a character will have a vision of their death. In that vision, they will see a bunch of other people close to them in proximity also die. And typically, what they will do is then stop that death from happening, right? That basically what they saw in the vision. They will prevent that death from happening and set into motion this sort of domino effect where death now comes after all the people who did not die in the vision but should have died in that vision. So what ends up happening is if Jane, Jerry, and Jack died in the vision before our protagonist, then in the real world, Jane, Jerry, and Jack will now die in that exact order. Death will go for Jane, then for Jerry, then for Jack, then our protagonist. So our protagonist oftentimes sets out to try and stop Death's plan to kill all of the cast. But the intrigue in these deaths oftentimes comes from the fact that we, the audience, know it's happening, but the characters don't. The characters have to figure out that they are next in line or what exactly will kill them. Now, in Final Destination Bloodlines, we've got a flip on that. Stephanie doesn't have the visions, but she knows of the visions because in her nightmares, she's experienced those same visions. And essentially, she then is trying to convince the rest of the cast, who is her immediate family members, uncles, aunts, cousins, brothers, fathers, mothers, her immediate family. She's trying to convince them that, look, I've seen these visions, and here is evidence of other people dying of unnatural causes, every single one of them, over the past 50 years. And now, we've just witnessed someone in our family die of unnatural causes. 2 of them, in fact, right? At that point in the story, it's 2 family members that have died. And her family doesn't believe her. They arguing about whether or not she's insane, she's insensitive, things like that. But it's bizarre because all of them are now aware. They didn't see the first death, but they know the circumstances surrounding the first death. And they saw the second death take place right in front of them, and none of them seem to have any sort of doubts except for one character. But it's unfortunate because Final Destination is very formulaic in the sense. We're always going to have one character who's just starkly against it, like almost to an irrational degree, and then we're going to have a character who's just there for it, but they're supposed to be the character you sort of latch onto as an audience member and go, yeah, they got the right idea, I hope they don't die, and then they die, right? And likewise, the character who is starkly against it occupies the role of being the jerk, so that you, the audience member, goes, man, I hope this person gets it, just to prove that our protagonist is right. I hope they get killed, and then they don't get killed very typically. Either they don't get killed when you expect them to, or they will get killed much, much later. So if you've watched Final Destination movies, you've basically watched Final Destination Bloodlines, which is a very unfortunate thing. But that brings me into a second point that I will get to a little bit later. To round off the whole thing about the characters being a problem here, it's that it's always in service of what's happening in the plot. You don't ever feel like there's an illusion that these are characters that are being played. It's always that you sit there and go, okay, this character said this because they need to do this. This character did this and this and this. For example, this is going to be a spoiler, right? So if you want to click off, please click off now. The spoiler in question is, one of the characters, Stephanie's aunt, reveals that one of her children is not, it's an illegitimate child, right? She reveals that it's an illegitimate child, which means that the order of how you assume the characters are going to die is not actually the order that Stephanie and we, the audience, expect it to be. We expect it to go A, B, C, and D, but what we didn't realize is that B, so it was A, and then the character B, they are an illegitimate child, so they are not in the chain. So in actuality, the deaths go in order A, C, D, E. The B person, they are not in the chain, right? Which then causes the characters to mess up a little bit. But that character, the aunt, after revealing this information, she gets removed from the story entirely. We don't get to see what her perspectives are on any of her family members from that point dying. Remember, some of the characters that are dying are her children. Some of the characters that are dying are her siblings, for example, right? No, not her siblings. It's never mind. It's not her siblings. But the point is that these are her immediate family as well. Her kids' siblings, and not siblings, cousins and such, right? Her nieces and nephews. They are dying, and we don't get to see her reaction. We don't get to see what her perspectives are. And it's weird, right? Because you sit there and you go, oh, it's because she was here to reveal that information, that she had an illegitimate child, and therefore the order of the deaths are a little bit messed up from what we understand. That's all she was here to do. Likewise, we have the character's father, Stephanie's father. He's just sort of there to try and be the voice of reason, but that's pretty much it. He doesn't actually do anything else in the story. And it feels odd because doesn't he have any particular perspectives as to what is this? Because he's not an immediate bloodline, right? So he's not in the chain of people who are going to be killed. But watching these people be killed, should that not have any effect on him? Should we not get some reaction shots or something to that effect? Nope, we don't get any of that, right? Because the meta is a problem, and that's problem number 2. But again, rounding it off, characters, they don't feel like they are at all interesting. They don't feel at all like the writers put in any care or any attention to them. It's just, this person is going to die in this way. So we'll make it that they are, let's say that they're Stephanie's best friend. Yeah, they're Stephanie's best friend. There you go. And that's it. That's pretty much it. How are they Stephanie's best friend? I don't know. Because in the movie we get revealed that no, they used to be best friends. They're not best friends anymore. Why aren't they best friends anymore? No idea. They just aren't. And now the character's dead. Oh, this person, they don't like Stephanie. Why don't they like Stephanie? They just think that she's full of it. Okay. And now they're dead. Alright, cool. They're dead now. So I guess their opinions and perspectives didn't actually matter, because you revealed it to me basically 10 minutes before the character died. So what now? The characters, they don't have enough effort. And the solution to this problem, by the way, is simply to just let us see the characters engage with each other, right? And again, a lot of this doesn't even need to be very complicated. Think of it this way. One of the characters is introduced as being a very laid-back guy. He's a gamer. He's also like the rebel type of the family, if that makes any sense, right? And he, for example, I think he even describes himself as a dropout at some point. But for example, he should probably be a little bit more inclined to believe something that Stephanie says, simply because he's engaged with video games, right? He's engaged with fantasy and media. I think he's playing Mortal Kombat or a game similar to Mortal Kombat at the beginning, right? So he should probably be a little bit more aligned to believe what she's saying. Even if he is, again, this sort of rebel without a cause kind of character, he can be in denial at the beginning, but for him, he should probably be way more convinced of this a lot sooner. And maybe we should, as an audience, see that the reason he's a lot more convinced of this is because he's a gamer, right? He plays video games. He engages with the fantasy media in some capacity. And another character we can have basically being a little bit more hands-on, right? And then this hands-on character should probably then be the one who occupies the role of trying to resolve the problems themselves, right? They go solo, they try and solve the problem themselves, and then have the character who's like the gamer be like, no, I watch horror movies, I play video games. Normally when you try and do things on your own, it doesn't work out. You don't even need to do it in the sense of, oh, I've played video games and I've watched movies, don't split up or anything. They could just be saying that, no, I play games. In video games, oftentimes, if there's like a team component to it, the team component is really important. People who run solo, they do poorly. They have a bad experience. Let's try and stick together. We are family. We are a unit. You can have that character occupy that role. Then have the more practical character be the one to run on their own. Why I'm saying this is because that character that I'm describing, the rebel without a cause type character, he occupies both roles in the movie. He's the person who gets most convinced of this after he gets over the initial denial, but he's also the character who decides to run solo and do it by himself, which I can understand. He's the rebel. Obviously, he would want to do something, air quotes, by himself. But a lot of rebellions feature many rebels, right? It doesn't feature just a singular rebel. So why can't we just break this stereotype that the rebel without a cause is always going to be the lone wolf? Why not make the rebel without a cause actually be someone who's trying to get everybody to join their cause, regardless of if they have one or not? Why not do something like that, right? And then have another character occupy the role of, I need to do this solo, I'm the hands-on independent type character. Do something like that. Have another character be confused as to which role they should occupy. We have a character who does that already. They sort of 50-50. Do I believe this? Do I not believe this? And from there, you sort of build more dynamics, right? You start to go with a character who wants to be closer to someone like Stephanie, for example, but has a little bit of trouble because of some things that they've said in the past, some things that they've done in the past, which leads them to be a little bit more isolated from the rest of the group. And that person, unfortunately, is one of the earlier ones to die, and have some of the other characters then sort of reveal this to Stephanie, saying that, no, it's very likely that this person wanted to hear you out, wanted to be close to you and all kinds of stuff like that, but they felt as though the things that you two have done and said in the past to one another has basically resulted then in a relationship that can't be fixed very easily, which is partly why they died. Stephanie can then sit there and go, wow, then it must have been my fault that this person died, and then have that be part of the reason that drives her even more to try and save the rest of her family. That's it. You don't need to go super deep with it, because I'm saying a lot of these things, and if you've watched the movie, you're probably already piecing together who's the characters I'm talking about, right? It's her cousins, for anyone who's watched the movie. And I'm using what I've been told by the movie already to try and just build some of this, because it's there, but it's also so vague and there's so little time spent on it that it might as well not be there. So that's point number one in terms of the characters. Let's move on to the meta, because this is a lot more complicated to try and explain to someone, especially if you've not sort of engaged with this kind of conversation before. I'm going to give you an AI summary and then try and break it down, because it's very difficult to word what the meta fiction is, right? But the meta is when a story becomes self-aware, right? Drawing attention to the fact that it is a story, or even breaking the fourth wall. Now, fourth wall breaks, for all of you out there, isn't just a character turning literally to the fourth wall and going, hey, look at this, like a Deadpool or a She-Hulk or something like that. Fourth wall breaks also come within the acknowledgement of other movies that exist in a franchise, right? So when somebody says, have you ever heard of this plane that exploded in a Final Destination movie? They're referencing the first Final Destination. And that becomes then meta, right? So why is meta commentary bad in Final Destination, right? Because it's not bad in of itself. People breaking the fourth wall, people making commentary on the narrative structure of their own story, people inserting themselves into a story, playing themselves, things like that. Those aren't bad. But why it doesn't work in Final Destination is because there is an awareness, first of all, that there's an audience watching this. There's an awareness that there is that this is a horror movie, second of all. And then thirdly, there is this awareness that there is a particular way Final Destination movies tend to play out. So we will either tongue-in-cheek make a reference to that, or we will just blatantly copy it, but then pretend like because we are aware we copied it, it should be okay. Right? That's where the issue in the meta commentary and meta fiction of the story lies. An example that I can give you is Final Destination movies have been doing this for a long time. It's not just Bloodlines. There is this thing that happens in Final Destination movies where we get fake out, right? A character will be set up to die in X way, and then they will die in Y way or Z way or all the other letters that come before that. This is something that happens because the movies know you, the audience member, are expecting that the character will die in this particular fashion, right? They walk into a room, they turn on the gas stove, they don't actually turn it on, the spark doesn't actually ignite the gas stove, so now the gas is just leaking into the room. Then we cut to a window that is broken that then reflects the light onto the shattered glass, which then reflects it into something else, which then causes it to burn a piece of paper. Slowly but surely we see the smoke rising from the paper. We then cut back to the gas. The music starts to swell a little bit more. We then hear the sound of the gas. We hear the sound of the paper slowly beginning to ignite. But then we cut away to a character walking into the shower, for example, and it's like, oh, okay, they're still building the tension. It's okay, they're still building the tension. Then the character's in the shower, and then they slip and they cut their foot on something, and then they have to get out the shower and deal with the foot. But then as they're dealing with the cut on their foot, they recognize that the gas stove is still on. So they walk into the kitchen and they turn off the gas stove. And it's like, oh, why did that build tension? Oh, it built tension because we as the audience are expecting that this is death, right? This is death's domino effect, this Rube Goldberg machine kind of approach that death takes in all the Final Destination movies to kill people. But here, it's just been subverted. And that's fine, that's okay. But the thing is, this happens over and over and over, even to the same character, where we get the character, oh, this will be the thing that kills him. Nope, it's not that. Oh, this will be the thing that kills him. Nope, it's not that. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's this. And then something will explode and they will die. And that's so unsatisfying to watch. But the reason it's playing out this way is because the writers, and I guess air quotes the movie by extension, knows that that's what you thought would happen. And it goes, look, that's writing. You see that? You thought that this was going to be the way that they died, but it wasn't. So when we're talking about this in-universe, right? Death is going after people because they have cheated death. But for whatever reason, Death is also playing games while going after people. And that's weird because when Death doesn't do that for other characters, and it's most of the time, grand majority of the time, Death is not playing games when they are going after other people. Death is setting things into motion such that this person will die. That is the objective. But we will always have one or two characters per movie who we will get that fake out deaths from, right? Sometimes it's not even Death going after that person because that person isn't even next in the chain. So it's just now a thing of, oh, you did this as the writer because we, the audience, expect that this person is next in line. But they are not, right? So then why did you do this? Why is this in the movie? Well, it's in the movie because the audience thinks that they're next in line. So we're going to put this in the movie, even though in universe Death wouldn't be doing any of this. And then we need to interpret it as this is all a massive coincidence because there's that awareness that the audience is watching at home. Now, being aware of an audience watching is inevitable, right? You're writing a story. Obviously, this is the case. But it means that everything that's happening in the story is cheaper because of that. We, as the audience, just go, oh, I guess this is happening now, right? We don't commit to anything that's happening because we've already been given evidence that the movie is willing to lie and deceive us just so that it can try and get a little bit of a reaction in some capacity or another. And when you're watching a movie where coincidence is quite often the driving force behind a lot of different things with no explanation for why some things happen the way that they do, it's not fun to engage with. But then it's even worse because we have characters who aren't even characters really. They are also just devices for the story so that the story can play out the way that the way that the writers want that story to play out. You see what I'm starting to get at here? Like that the meta just means that everything that happens in the movie is a lot cheaper. It feels now like you are watching actors. You're not watching characters. You are watching actors play these roles so that they can get killed and so that we can move on. That anything that happens in the story will happen only for the purpose of delivering this storyline of, oh, I bet you thought this person was going to die. And I'm not even going into necessarily one of the bigger bait and switch tactics that they do. So one of the biggest bait and switch tactics that happens in Final Destination is everything you watch taking place is irrelevant to the way that the character actually dies completely, right? It's related to the meta that I just mentioned and a couple of examples that I just mentioned, but I remember Final Destination 4 did this with one of the characters. It's a mother of 2 boys, if I'm not mistaken. And they're at a hair salon. And I'm not sure if she's the owner or if she's getting her hair done or something to that effect. I can't remember right now. But the point is, we get a lot of scenes building the tension, a lot of the music trying to really get us, ooh, this is so creepy, this is so scary, whoa. It's a salon, by the way, so it's like, I don't even know. Like, they keep zooming on the scissors, for example, and you get the swing whenever the scissors cut the hair or get too close to somebody's ear or skin or something like that, stuff like that. Designed to try and build that anxiety. But we have a hair iron get too close to a hairspray, and the can is slowly but surely getting more and more heated up, and it explodes, if I'm not mistaken, and it hits the ceiling fan. And you as an audience member is like, oh, okay, cinema is communicating to me right now, right? This is visual storytelling. The can is going to explode. It's going to relate to the ceiling fan. The ceiling fan's going to fall onto somebody. It's going to kill them. Whoa. It doesn't. There's a guy outside mowing the lawn, and one of the lawnmower blades hits a rock, and it flies straight into her eyeball, killing her, right? That's the way that she dies. Completely irrelevant, really, to the... Like, you could have had anything play out there. She could have been buying a hot dog from a stand and the death wouldn't have changed. She could have been a construction worker working on the street or something and her death wouldn't change. She could have been putting something in a mailbox and the death wouldn't have changed. Like, you could have placed her anywhere in any sort of circumstance that puts her close to a person mowing the lawn with a rock nearby and have that rock be flung into her eye, crushing her skull or whatever. It would have been the exact same death. So whatever led up to that death was irrelevant. We didn't need it. It was just a distraction, right? And it's also just wholly unsatisfying. And this is not something that Final Destination 4 alone does. Final Destination 5 does it as well. A character's having laser eye surgery. And I'm going to just condense all of it, right? She's having laser eye surgery. It's like, eye horror kind of things. It's really icky to watch. But then she just falls out of a window and gets run over by a car. Again, you could have replaced this with anything. A character falling out of a tall building and then getting hit by a car, that's like any kind of death ever. You could replace it with anything. Oh, she went bungee jumping, the bungee cord snapped, she fell into a river, and then when she got out of the river, she got hit by a car. Oh, Lamau. Same death, basically. Right? Like, you could have just done anything there. Oh, she was figure skating, and then one of her little what is the skates? What's the actual blade on the skates? Is it a blade? But one of those things snapped, and then those the machine, the ice machine thingy, it just ran over her. Oh no. You could have replaced it with anything, and these like fake out deaths, they're not satisfying to watch again because they mess up the tempo. We build, and then the character dies. Right? Or we build, and the character doesn't die. And we go, whew, I thought they were gonna, and then they die. Or we build, and then it's like, oh man, they just managed to escape death. Oh no, something else came out. Nope, they just managed to escape death again. Oh man, and then they die. It's boring to watch. It sucks. And this movie does all of those same things. It has all of those same problems. You think this character's gonna die. No, they won't. Oh, here's a death. No, it's a fake out. Oh, here's a character being like air quotes, let's just say stalked by death, right? Things that are coincidentally happening that it's like, oh, death is working. Actually, that was just a fake out. That character isn't about to die at all. Oh, okay. Why did I see that then? Why is this a scene? And then, by the way, that's a spoiler. That's a spoiler. But it's another criticism, right? Because you find out that this character, yeah, and then we get a bunch of other characters, right, who also just die, and it's like, it's all trying to again build to this fake out where it's like, oh, this character's about to die, this character's about to die, this character's about to die. Nope, they're not about to die. Actually, another character has just died somewhere else. Lamau. You thought, didn't you? You literally thought. It's like, and by the way, these are two shameless fake outs immediately after one another. And why are they happening like that? Well, it's because there's the meta, right? The characters themselves are aware of the rules of the Final Destination movies. In previous Final Destination movies, the characters had to find out as they went along, right? They had to trial and error often meant characters dying, right? Or characters being on the brink of death in some instances. But in this one, it's just handed to our main character Stephanie on a platter. This is how death works. This is how it's going to be playing out from now on. And that's sort of like the meta seeping in. They made the effort to at least try and, wrap it in an explanation in universe, but that explanation in universe is never given to us either. Stephanie gets a book from a woman named Iris. I will not explain the relation to Iris, but there is a relation. She gets a book from a woman named Iris that details exactly how to avoid death, which Stephanie doesn't ever actually make use of, and details how death typically works, the chain, the approach that death will take, all those things is delivered to us through Iris and this book that she has. But the book isn't relevant to the rest of the plot, really. It's just to get out of the way the characters figuring out that phase of the story, which is finding out death is still coming after us. Death does it in this way, and there is a chain of events. That we just skipped that. And you would think that by skipping that, more time will then be spent on the characters, or more time will be spent setting up the ways that these characters will die. It isn't. It really isn't. There's only 2 instances that I can think of where the character moments really shine through. It's when they're at a hospital, closer to the end of the movie, and it's the very end of the movie, the last couple of deaths where they return to Iris's home. Because they believe that that's the safest place to be on Earth. It really doesn't look like it is at all. It looks like a death trap got turned into a house, right? And lo and behold, it is a death trap when they get there. Crazy, right? Those are the only 2 like character-driven moments that I can really think about, but they are all undermined by things that either happened before the movie, like before that point in the movie, my bad, and things that will happen after that point in the movie, like the ending. It's undone, right? That triumphant moment is undone by the stupid thing that every Final Destination movie does, where it's like, and now a few weeks later, or a few months later, or half a year later, like they just do a time skip. And then the characters are sitting there like, woo, man, I'm living a good life. Things are really good. Ever since those bad things happened to us, things have been going really great. I can't imagine how this could go poorly. I'm so happy that the line of death has been broken. Death is no longer coming for us. That's so cool. That's so great. And then death comes for them and they die. And it's like, again, we really keep doing this exact same fake out at the end of every single movie. Why? Why are we doing this? Why did death take a break for a couple of months to just let these, like, death is a troll. Like, that's the joke that me and my friends have when it comes to talking about this movie, that Death has a sense of humor. Death is just like trolling people, because that's the only way you can explain any of these weird inconsistencies with how Death goes about killing people. There's always like this grace period at the end of the movie, and only at the end of the movie. But the characters themselves in Final Destination Bloodlines, more so than previous films, don't even seem to recognize that half their family, no, not even half their family, like 80% of their family is now immediate family, is dead, gone, been killed off in the most grotesque and unnatural ways possible. There's no acknowledgement of that at all. The characters are just sitting there like, haha, we're gonna go to prom, woohoo, yeah, prom time, ha ha ha. And then somebody's like, I saved this person. Well, you didn't really save them. Yeah, and they're just chatting, bro. Like, they're talking about an event where their mother got crushed to death by Death. They're just talking about it so casually, so openly with a stranger, right? And their father is also present, if I'm not mistaken, right? His ex-wife or wife, I'm not even sure what exactly, if they ever got divorced, but they're talking about how his wife died and how his son and daughter almost died. And they're just like, yes, that was such a weird event, guys. Haha, moving on. They know that this is because of supernatural causes. This isn't just like, I almost got struck by lightning. I almost got hit by a car. That brick almost fell on my head. For them, that is something that is very likely to happen another time. In real life, it's not. But this is just happening. The movie's ending is so bad because this is dealing with characters who specifically know more information than any Final Destination characters knew before them. They have way more information to work with, and because of that, you would assume that they would be way more cautious. They aren't. So they just end up dying anyways, and it's just so unsatisfying once again. That's just something that's going to come up rather often, I think, if this franchise continues. It's unsatisfying. It's not about the creativity. It's not about the setup and the payoff, really. It's just the fact that, it is the payoff mostly. Right? It's the fact that there is no setup. There is basically no payoff, right? Characters don't even, for example, die in a way that kind of relates to them, right? That, for example, like a character has a really triumphant moment. They were an alcoholic. They stopped being an alcoholic now. Or they set down the path to stop being an alcoholic. And they die, unfortunately, before they can even really make do with this new perspective on life that they have or anything else like that. Or we have a character who's like really, really cowardly, right? And the way that they die is because they express a level of bravery, or that they get their comeuppance because they are cowardly. And if they weren't cowardly, we as the audience can at least assume they might have survived, maybe even just a little bit longer. But unfortunately, they are cowards, so they ended up dying, Or a character that's really vain, they want to be the center of attention, and because they wanted to be the center of attention, they die. This is things that are very rare in Final Destination, and it's bad because of that, right? You could have done so much more by simply going, this character is a lone wolf. They will die because they are a lone wolf. This character is a rebel without a cause. As soon as they get a cause, they die, right? And this movie tries to do something like that, but it's so paper thin. It's wafer thin. I don't even know what a wafer is necessarily, but I'm assuming it's thinner than a paper, right? Characters dying in really interesting ways in Final Destination sort of has devolved to the method of the death is complex. Not that it's interesting, right? The method of death is really complex. And I think that we are missing the forest for a tree. The characters dying should be meaningful to the people in universe as well, because we are watching a story from the perspective of the survivors. And if we get more insight into the survivors, their perspectives, what they think and feel, how they intend to move forward from that death, even just acknowledging the death would be really nice, but like seeing these things from that perspective is the most important part, which Final Destination Bloodlines out of all of them seems to have completely forgotten. I don't know if it's because they were working with multiple scripts. I could see that there has to have been like evidence of multiple scripts within the story because of just how weirdly everything plays out and how strangely it all wraps up. And there is a particular character in this movie that I really, really liked, and I didn't think I would like him from his introduction, right? Because he sucks. But as the story goes on, I was like, man, this guy's really interesting, and he gets like one of the most cruel deaths in this form. Probably like I could compare it to Final Destination 3, the two girls in the tanning booths, right? He gets a similar death to them, right? Where it's like super torturous. It's as if the writer said, you in particular, you need to suffer. You must suffer. I've got it out for you specifically, buddy. And I don't know why they did that. He was just trying to do the right thing. He took a while to come around, but why did you do that to this guy? That was so mean-spirited, bro. It's like, dang. This guy didn't deserve this, right? Like, he's a jerk, sure, but this? Man. And that's the only character I think I was really interested in, and I only realized that after the movie was over, right? Like, when the movie was done. I remember Stephanie and Iris, because Iris is a fake-out intro character, and Stephanie is our protagonist. I thought Iris might have been an interesting character to follow because of the time that it takes place in. The intro of the movie takes place in, I think, like the 60s or something like that. And I thought that could be an interesting like location and era to have a story play out. But unfortunately, that was just a bait and switch for the actual plot, which I think we all knew if we've seen the trailers, right? In the trailers, the story takes place in the modern day, so it was always going to be like a bait and switch. But it was more so like, oh, this is interesting. Okay, hold on, tell me more. And then it's like, nope, we're done with that now. On to the less interesting characters, less interesting time period, and I guess less interesting circumstances surrounding these characters' deaths. And that's it. So let's tier the movies. I think Final Destination 1 is still the best. It's not good, by the way. I think it's just the best. Final Destination 2 is a very close contender. If you asked me on another day, I might say Final Destination 2 is better than Final Destination 1. But Final Destination 2 I'll put in second place. In third place will be Final Destination 5. Then Bloodlines, this movie. Then we have 3. Then we have 4. That will be the order that I will put it in. I like 5 a lot because of what it tries to do, not because it's actually a very good one, right? I think that 5 has a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of the characters suck, but I think it is a decent one in terms of what it does conceptually compared to Bloodlines, right? Bloodlines is also getting by on the idea of the Bloodlines aspect of this, right? But I think that would be the order. 1, 2, 5, 6, 3, 4. 4 is the one that introduced me to the franchise, but I can't ignore all the goofy nonsense that takes place in Final Destination 4. I just can't ignore it. In fact, to me, I watch it and laugh quite often, especially with my buddies. But that's been it. I hope you enjoyed. Tell me what your thoughts are, right? What do you think about the Final Destination franchise? What do you think about horror movies in general? I have a tough time kind of reviewing and rating horror movies because I always feel as though it's not really fair to tier them in the same way that I would any other movies. Horror movies just have like this, I guess, special needs category, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that's offensive to say, but it just feels to me like I can't score it the same way, right? This is something that I need to look at way differently to a normal movie because there's problems in horror movies that just aren't in other movies proper, right? And it makes it very difficult for me to review and really just give any scores to horror movies. But you tell me what you think about Final Destination, horror movies in general. Tell me what you think about this movie in particular. Do you think that some of the stuff I'm saying makes sense? Would you want me to go into a little bit more detail? All that good stuff. And I will see you next time here on the Cannonbull channel. Bye.